Welcome, Walnut. I'm Lara, but you can call me Laz, your host for Walnut Wednesday. This is your reminder to be brave, be yourself, and know that you can make the world a better place just by what you decide today. Here, I'm going to share my weekly walnuttings with you on a Wednesday. Hello, Walnut. It is me, Laz, here for another episode of Walnut Wednesday. Welcome, welcome. I hope you're having a lovely week. This week, I am very excited to introduce my guest, Anna, to the podcast. Hello.
Hi. So nice to meet you. So nice to be here.
Nice to meet you too. So Anna and I haven't actually met in real life, and we've only just kind of become online friends. So this conversation is like our first conversation, right?
We have no idea what's going to come up.
It's so good. So Anna, I'll get you to introduce yourself to the Walnuts listening first of all, and then we'll see what happens.
Yeah, this is the hardest part. It's like, how do I define myself in a certain number of characters? But essentially, I'm a women's life coach and self-leadership coach. 5 years ago, I started my business after getting enormously burnt out in the corporate world. I'm a corporate dropout. I worked in sort of marketing and as an EA to CEOs for a number of years. And it's so funny. I was just reflecting on this today. I didn't realize how miserable I felt until I felt happy, and until I felt aligned, and until I felt empowered, and until I felt lit up going to work every day. And so my biggest mission has really been, it came about through really healing myself and finding myself. And it sounds so cliche, but it truly was like, there's got to be more to life than this. Like, this isn't how I'm meant to wake up feeling every day and what I'm meant to be living for. And so I set about on this path of personal development, of just understanding myself. And I was always a really curious kid, and I just wanted to understand myself better. And I became really passionate about it. And yeah, one thing led to another, and now I'm a life coach. I've had a business for 5 years. I've recently become a breathwork facilitator, and I have a podcast as well called the Full Circle Podcast. So yeah, that's me.
Oh my gosh, I feel like, because I am still a corporate worker, weaning off the corporate life. I'm not like a big take the leap steps kind of person, but I've just started my weaning off journey into doing this walnut thing full time. And so I feel very strongly connected to your story, because I'm just curious I feel like you're those few steps ahead of me, which is like really exciting. So I can ask you questions for a friend. But
it's so funny. And so many people reach out to me on Instagram, and they will have heard one of my earlier podcast episodes, and they're like, oh my God, I'm at my corporate job and I'm trying to leave, and so many people just resonate with that story. So yeah, we can absolutely go into that.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And one of the things that we kind of connected over was like hearing the Kiwi accent. So like both you and I, we follow like really inspirational, big time coaches, and they're all from sort of, US or Canada or whatever. And we kind of came across each other with the familiar accent coming up. So where did the personal development stuff start for you, Anna? I'm curious.
That is such a great question. I have a memory of being given the book You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay.
Oh my gosh, I have that right here.
It's so good. It's I feel like everyone should just be given that book at school. And I think I was given it when I was maybe between 18 and 20. And I remember reading it on this flight to the Gold Coast. And I was just like, holy shit. Like, nothing has really landed for me in the way that this content landed for me. And I just started soaking up everything. And what was after that? I don't know. I guess it was a series of events. I feel like a lot of my life I was operating on autopilot, right? Until I had developed self-awareness, everything was just on autopilot. And so I wasn't aware until I became aware. So I think my first moment of awareness was becoming really interested in wellness. And I just started to really soak up wellness and supplements and food and nutrition. And I wanted to be in that world. And so I enrolled in a holistic health coach certification with IIN, which is a school in the US. And yeah, I just started seeing what people in the US were doing. Coaching is a massive industry over there, and people were so not afraid to put themselves out there, and they're not afraid to shine and, be on big stages. And I guess I had that kind of desire within me whilst still existing in New Zealand, which is very much tall poppy syndrome and, don't be too much. So I don't know. I just followed the alignment, and I followed what was pulling me and calling me. And nearly every coach I've worked with has been American, and I love having that energy behind me because it's something that we get to lease the frequency of, right? Of like, if we don't have that within ourselves, we can lease that from someone else. And that's why coaching and mentorship is so powerful, because we get to tap into someone else's energy. So yeah, that's it in a walnut nutshell.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. I love it. I always am curious how people like stumbled onto their little path. So, and I do need to know the story of leaving the corporates just real quick. We don't need to spend a lot of time here, but I need to know what happened and how you did it, asking for a friend.
Okay, I'll give you like the long story short, but it's really short story long. But essentially, I developed anxiety, and I started, like, every day in the workplace, I started having these heart palpitations. And I was like, what the fuck is happening to me? What is going on? And it started occurring more and more. And I was becoming breathless, and I would sit at my computer and I just couldn't focus, and I couldn't make decisions, and I struggled to prioritize. And every email that was coming into my inbox was like a red alert, like a panic went off inside my body. And what I later learned was that my nervous system was so dysregulated that it couldn't determine what was a threat and what was not a threat. And so everything was treated as a threat. And so it was from, and prior to that, I'd been through a really rough breakup. I'd moved home from Australia after living over there for 8 years. And my life was just kind of going really, 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 really fast. And I didn't have the practices or the nervous system in order to cope with things. And I also hadn't healed the trauma from that relationship. And so it all, as it always does, it all kind of comes about in this dark night of the soul, this massive kind of awakening so from those heart palpitations, from those first flutters of anxiety, I had my first panic attack, and then got driven to A&E by my mum and was pushed through as a priority one, like literally thinking I was dying. Because in my family, we don't have anxiety. Like, we don't have, panic attacks or anxiety. It wasn't something that was really welcomed in my family. Mm-hmm. And so I literally thought I was dying. And then to be rushed through A&E and then told very calmly by this doctor of like, oh, you just had a panic attack. I was like, what? All of this for that?
I was dying.
I was like, please take me seriously. And I was given some medication and sent home. And that was really the turning point of waking up and going, how did this happen to me? Like, how does someone who's seemingly quite healthy and quite, switched on develop anxiety and get to this point? And so okay, I just came back to your question, which was, how did you actually leave the corporate job? So I ended up talking to my employers about that and said, look, I'm not coping. And they suggested that I take holiday leave. And I said, what? You joking? Is this a joke? And they eventually lowered my work. They took some projects off me and lowered my work amount and blah, blah, blah. And then I just thought, I'm not doing this. And so I booked a 1-month trip to Bali. I'd been on a retreat to Bali like a year before or something, and was like, I need to come back here. And so I just had so much audacity. I was already studying to be a coach during that time for a year. And I thought, I'm just gonna run my first retreat in Bali. Like, how hard can it be? And so I planned this retreat. I sold it out. I booked a month-long trip to Bali, and I decided, if they don't give me this time off to go to Bali, I'm just going to quit. And then I quit before it got to that point anyway. So that's the story. I just quit. I was just like, fuck it.
Yeah, you got to that little point. I've had other jobs where like I felt that little niggle, like, and then like one tiny thing happened. I'm like, no, I'm done. I'm applying for other things. You just had a moment where you just had to make that like snap decision.
Yeah.
It really does get to be that simple. I had a feeling that this would be how it happened for you, but sometimes I just want like the magic, like 1, 2, 3, how to step to how, well, not just myself, all the walnuts listening to, I can imagine. Thank you so much.
If I can just add something in there, because I obviously work with women now, and I see this so much, and so much of it is that we don't trust ourselves.
Yeah.
And we favor the familiar versus favoring the unknown. And so Our nervous system will much rather stay in something which is familiar, like a job that we hate or a relationship that feels, unhappy, or, living at home with our parents, even though it sucks. Our nervous system will feel so much more comfortable doing that than leaping into the unknown. And so that's just something that like every single one of us is up against. We have this fear and this fight within us to stay within our comfort zone. And so the more that we can build self-trust, the more that we can just sort of expand our window of tolerance to do things that feel scary, and to really like come into our intuition and really start to listen to that discernment and that inner, that inner knowing, because that inner knowing is always there. So can we practice just listening to it all the time?
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for adding that. One thing I wanted to sort of get you to explain to the walnuts listening as well was you posted on Instagram sort of recently. It was a little bit it was still to do with anxiety, but how you wouldn't just ignore the smoke alarm going off in your house. And I just wondered, can you talk to that analogy a little bit more, because I felt like I really resonated with that a lot. It's a really great metaphor.
Yeah, and I wish I remember where I heard that from. It must have been on a podcast, but essentially it was, we treat anxiety like this thing that needs to be like silenced, or this thing that just needs to be switched off. And we, there can be so much stigma and shame and even confusion around what anxiety actually is. And what I say with all of our emotions, whether we deem them good or bad, is it's just a feedback system. It's just a feedback loop. And so the more that we can approach anxiety or sadness or anger or hurt or jealousy or any of those emotions with curiosity, there is so much wisdom within that. And so the smoke alarm signal thing is like, if the smoke alarm was going off in your house because you burnt the toast, you wouldn't go and like yell at the smoke alarm and throw it out the window and like bash it and hope that it quiets. You'd go and check what was burning. And so it's the exact same thing with anxiety. If we're experiencing these feelings like anxious thoughts or worry or panic attacks or whatever it is, however yours manifests, it's different for everyone. Can we just go inwards and get curious about, I wonder what this is about? Because looking backwards on my journey, if I had have just said, am I resting enough? Have I got support around me? Have I got friends around me who feel really nurturing? Am I in a job that really lights my soul on fire? Do I, have self-care practices? Do I take time to get to know myself? Like all of that would have been hell no.
Yeah.
And I could have deconstructed that, and I could have, we can only connect the dots looking backwards, not looking forwards. But had I have approached that with curiosity rather than like, what is wrong with me? Why am I broken? I might have ended up in a very different place.
Yeah. But it got you to here, right?
Exactly. I might still be in the corporate world if I had have had curiosity, and then
yeah. Imagine. Oh my gosh. Oh, talking to you makes me feel very excited.
I love that. And do you know what, Lara? Fear and excitement feel the same in the body. They have the same frequency. And so often when people are like, oh, I'm so scared of that, I say, are you? Or is that actually excitement?
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
I call it scare-sighted. It's like this feeling I get in my body when I just know I'm going to do something, but I'm really scared, but I'm really excited at the same time.
I love it because you've still got the sweaty palms, you've still got the racing heart, you've still got the like,
Yeah. So I suppose, Anna, do you still get anxiety a little bit now, or is it more that scare-sightement because it's like an up level thing rather than like a totally overcome with fear thing or overwhelm,
That is so interesting because about 3 or 4 days ago, I had this moment where I was like, oh, I don't have anxiety anymore. I don't experience anxiety anymore. And then the very next day or like 2 days later, I was like, what is going on? What is this feeling? And I mean, you always get what you need, right? And I have a firm belief that whatever you're teaching, you're going to experience. You're going to get slapped in the face with whatever it is that you're teaching. And so at the moment in my work, I'm teaching a lot about self-leadership and personal power and boundaries. And so I feel like the universe delivers the curriculum that you need. And there's a lot of curriculum coming my way, which my nervous system is just like, oh, not this again. Like, oh, do we have to deal with this? And yeah. And so I still experience the sensations of anxiety, but I know now that it's okay, my nervous system is taking on too much. I need more rest. I need to call in more support. What have I been doing for the past month, which perhaps hasn't been supportive in my menstrual cycle? And it's more just okay, this is information versus I'm broken.
Yes, I love that, information versus I'm broken. And and the time that it goes on is much shorter now because you know how to deal with that information and how to process that information and where to put that information, right?
Totally. Yeah.
Um, let's talk about boundaries, because that's something that I call myself a recovering people pleaser. So there's still
Congratulations.
thank you so much. Welcome. No, and I've been doing a lot of work on boundaries and in that space of like learning to say no, learning to say yes, thinking of myself, what actually does selfish mean to me, things like that. So I would love for you to talk about your version of boundaries and how you kind of implement that in your life as a life coach in New Zealand, in Auckland.
Oh my gosh, it's such a big topic. And I wish I remembered when I started learning about boundaries, because I absolutely, they were not present growing up. And even now, like trying to set boundaries or have a boundaries conversation with my mum is like the hardest thing in the world. And that's what I hear from most of my clients, is setting boundaries with family is like just the worst.
Oh, yes. Oh my gosh.
And for good reason, right? Like the dynamic, it's a completely different dynamic, because the parent has always been the person who put the boundaries on us and created boundaries for us. And we're now asking to switch roles and we're setting boundaries with the parent. It's like, it's so discombobulating. And I actually have a free boundaries course that I can share with your listeners we can put it in the show notes, but they just go to annasquelch.com/BOYB, which stands for Boss of Your Boundaries. So that's a resource that I'll share with you all. So
might need to take that myself.
do it. And I also have a masterclass called Big Girl Boundaries. So I'll send you both of them and you can just party
Amazing.
on the boundaries.
Yes, please do. Yeah, we'll pop them in the show notes for you, Walnut, definitely.
Yeah. And I think looking back on, my journey with the corporate burnout and with the anxiety and with, dating a string of emotionally unavailable men and all of the circumstances in my life, I think I looked back on it and it was an absence of boundaries. And that's because I didn't know what they were. That's because society doesn't really support women having boundaries and women, standing in their power. We live in a patriarchal society where women should be demure and they should be, amenable and palatable and say yes and be kind and all of those things. And so it was more a learning of what they were, and then just having this awareness and this light bulb moment of like, oh, it's actually okay for me to say no to my friends. Because I wasn't a big drinker growing up. Like I wasn't really into alcohol. And I now know why that was, because I'm very spiritual. I'm very energetically connected. And so alcohol would always just make me feel like an alien. Mm-hmm. But I didn't know that I could say no to going out and getting drunk or going out and partying or going out to the party or whatever the thing was. And so I would say yes to things and then live with this like dread for that. Like, oh my God, there's a party in a week that I've said yes to and I really don't want to go. I'm going to let someone down. And then I would pull out at the last minute and then I would feel the guilt. And then, oh my God, my friends are, not going to want to be my friends anymore. And I just created this vicious cycle of like not knowing how to say no. So I'd say yes and then suffer all of the emotional consequences afterwards. Mm-hmm. So it was really just an unlearning of all of that and like giving myself permission to actually say no and actually advocate for my needs, and that like people weren't going to reject me. Yes, some people did. Some people left my life because they couldn't, they didn't want to uphold my boundaries. And what I tell people now is that your boundaries are a filtering system. So they're going to filter people in and they're going to filter people out, and it's all perfect. Yeah. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell. And the best place to start is just looking at your life and looking at the areas in your life where there feels like there is conflict, friction, misalignment, where there's resentment, and just doing a bit of an audit. And anywhere in your life where you feel anger towards someone or towards something is often a signal for boundaries to be put in place there as well.
And it takes it sounds all well and good, when you talk about like boundaries on like this end of it. But I remember the first time I said no, I was like, all the like shaky hands, and like I even got scaresighted because I knew that I was going to come and share it here on the podcast. So I was like, oh my god, I'm so scaresighted to share this. I just said no, and the podcast episode is called I Said No.
Oh my God.
But like now saying no is like, oh, water off a duck's back. Like if it's something I don't want to do, it's very not often that I do it not wanting to do it. Do you know what I mean? So it's a really, the more you practice and build the boundaries, the more towards like empowered and strong you can feel. Like I actually feel like a quite energetically strong, which is something I never thought I'd be able to say when I was in like, peanut era.
Yeah, because it's you reclaiming your power, and that's really what boundaries do, is it just pulls all of your power back to you and you get to plug any of your energy leaks.
Yeah.
And the part about confidence, nobody feels confident setting their boundaries. We weren't born confident setting boundaries. And I just put up an Instagram post about confidence just before this podcast recording. And confidence isn't something that you're born with. It's something that you cultivate through practice. And so, yeah, you're going to suck at your first boundaries. It's like the first pancake that you bake, right? Like it's shit. You want to throw it away. But you eat the next one and the next one gets better. And then eventually you're really good at making the pancakes. And so we get to build our capacity for things being uncomfortable. And the more that you practice boundaries, and so we can build confidence two ways: through practice, so practicing our boundaries, and through gathering evidence. And gathering evidence when it comes to boundaries means you set the boundary and no one died and no one rejected you and you didn't lose anything and you didn't fall over and it was okay and you've got evidence that it's going to be okay. And so that's how we get confident at boundaries. There's no silver bullet. It's just doing it.
I know. I feel like it always comes down to you just gotta do it.
Like Nike were right. Like just do it.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that, Anna. And one thing I would like to sort of touch on a little bit is the breathwork facilitation, because I'm a Reiki master and I know for me Reiki is my like healing modality. So I assume with you the same thing with the breathwork. So how did that come about? How did breathwork fall into your life and now into your coaching?
That's so interesting. I always said I would never teach breathwork. I remember going to a workshop in LA, I think it was 2017, and I did my first breathwork there. And then in 2018, I went to the next level of that workshop, and there was 60 or 70 of us in a room doing breathwork. And for about 45 minutes to an hour, which is a pretty long breathwork journey for your first experience. And the noises that I heard in that room and the sights that I saw, I was just like, what is this? What is going on? And I wasn't having much of an experience. It felt good. It felt like quite a release, but I certainly wasn't like levitating or leaving my body like most of the people in the room were. And then over time, I got more and more curious, and I started to notice a lot of coaches were weaving breathwork into their practice. And I ran a workshop a couple of years ago with a girlfriend in Brisbane who was a breathwork facilitator, and I taught about manifestation at the workshop. And I was just like, nah, it's not for me. Like, this is too full on. My nervous system can't hold this. Holding people when they're writhing in pain and when they're screaming and they're howling and, just all of the stuff that can happen in a breathwork practice. And then I got really real and I got really honest with myself and the level of transformation and healing that I want to facilitate in my clients. There's only so far that you can go with mindset work. And I became really passionate about learning about trauma and generational trauma and ancestral trauma and all of the traumas. And I did some training under trauma, and I thought, I need something else. I need a somatic practice in my tool belt. And having had anxiety in the past, my breath was always the first thing to go. I struggled to breathe. And so I knew that there was a lot of work there to do. And at the height of my anxiety, I went and saw a breathing instructor. She was like a breathing physiotherapist who taught me how to breathe again. And so I just knew that there was so much power in learning how to tap back into that. And then I went to more workshops. I went to the Awaken breathwork workshop with fellow Kiwis, Hella and Lucas, and fell in love with it. And then now here I am. I love it.
Oh, amazing.
So it was resistance. To put it in a nutshell, it was just like resistance. This thing scares me, and it was that excitement.
Yes.
And I did it.
I'm so proud of you. And I'm so happy you did, because I feel like the practices that you post about on the social medias feel so freeing and healing. And I haven't done a full breathwork session. I have heard like how out of this world amazing it is, but the small, like I've done a couple little ones at cacao ceremonies and things like that, and in my like little kundalini yoga as well, there's a couple of different like breaths that you can use in the movement. And it took me a little while to get the hype of I saw this and like this thing happened, la, la, la. At first I'm like, okay, what the hell? I just kind of can't breathe or focus on the breathing because it's distracting my like monkey mind. But then when you kind of keep at it, I feel like some amazing things and shifts kind of did start to happen. I still haven't had like the wow, like God moment that people have had, but I feel like $1,000,000 after the tiny little bursts of breathing that I've had. So I'm happy to know you and have someone in my not my tool belt, but like my collection now of people that I can go to for something like that, because I do know how powerful it truly can be.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And one of the biggest things they taught us at Breathwork School was to be agendaless. Because if you go in there saying, I need to meet God, or I need to leave my body, or I need to have this big experience, like smaller is better, like simple is better. And the breath is so powerful, and you're always going to get what you need in a session, whether that is like a massive cathartic release or whether that's just like a total feeling of elation. Being agendaless, and we can apply that to any area of life, right? Like being unattached to the outcome, dropping our expectations with things, and just allowing life to unfold as it's meant to. I think there's so much power in that.
Absolutely. I do this thing at work sometimes, which is absolutely ridiculous, because one of my like big things is I don't have time. I don't have time like for anything. And so time is this big thing. So I'll be at work and I have to really pull myself up on this, but I started to notice like how I'd go put my lunch in the microwave and then I would put it on for 2 minutes. And I quickly run around to the other side of the floor, do wheeze, make sure I get back to utilize that 2 minutes, like while my lunch was cooking, and fill up my drink bottle and do all these things in the 2 minutes rather than just stand there. And one day I was like, why am I running around like a headless chicken in the 2 minutes when I could just stand here for 2 minutes and literally just breathe, not special breathe, just breathe, like why am I like working my ass off and not giving myself 2 minutes of the day, you know what I mean? And so yeah, I feel like that little tiny moment of just like standing at the microwave breathing was so powerful. Yeah.
It's called non-demand time, like time where we're literally doing nothing. There's no demands. We're not trying to achieve anything. And, we have such an addiction to doing. We have such an addiction to accomplishment. And a lot of women that I work with, they derive their validation from doing. Like the more things that I can do, the more worthy I am, the more successful I am, the more whatever, the higher my self-worth is. And it's simply not true, because we put all of our power in these things outside of us, of like, I crossed off all of my things on my to-do list, or I've accomplished this, I've accomplished that. Yeah, but did you know yourself? Like, were you present to any of it? Did you breathe deeply into your abdomen? Did you, do you feel proud of those things? So there's so much power in that. Non-demand time. Put it in your notes.
Non-demand time. Oh my God, I love this episode. I want to talk to you forever. I've got so much I want to ask. Anna, before we kind of like wrap up, what a question that I ask all my guests that visit us on the podcast is, what does being a walnut mean to you?
I love this. I feel like being a walnut is it walnut or walnut? God. Is like the walnut just isn't trying to be any other nut, right? They're not trying to be a macadamia nut. They're not trying to be any other, like an almond, and like fit in a bit more. They're just like standing in their power, standing in their own lane. They're self-led. They're not asking questions about like, am I there yet? They're just, they're detached from the timeline. They're just trusting their path. They're trusting the unfolding. And I think they're underrated. They're the ones to watch, those walnuts. The end.
Full stop. I'm done. I love that. I've
Mic
got a little tear in my eye.
Oh.
That's a very lovely analogy and actually quite personal to me. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that that take on being a walnut, and I appreciate that so much. Where if the walnuts are listening and they're like, holy shit, I need to snoop this woman, she's amazing, take all my money, do all your free masterclasses, all the things, where do you like to hang out on the internet?
So mostly social media. So sorry, mostly Instagram, the social medias. So I'm just annasquelch.com on Instagram. I love it when people come in my DMs and want to have chats and want to ask questions and want to engage. So my DMs are always open. My website is annasquelch.com. The main way of working with me, high touch point, is my program, which is called Selfish. We're just about to start the next round July 18th, so it might be a little bit late for people, but the next round starts in October, and that's a 7-week program teaching you self-leadership, teaching recovering people pleasers how to put themselves first and become selfish, become self-led, and to regulate their nervous systems so they don't get burnt out. So yeah, that's my baby. I've got a lot more things. I've also got a free online community which is called A Higher Ground. So there's a link in my Instagram bio to join that. We've got 150 women from all over the world who are interested in growth and personal development and connection and all the things. And my OnlyFans, no, I'm kidding. That's just Instagram.
Just the one. Oh my gosh, that called me out. It's so funny. Oh, thank you so much, Anna. And so before we finish, if there is a walnut listening that's like feeling like a butthole, feeling like they never put themselves first, have you got like one little piece of guidance that's on your heart that you're feeling like really needs to come out of your mouth and into the world and into the ears of a walnut that's listening right now?
Oh my God, the pressure. I think the thing that I would just say is like, you matter, you're worthy. You would not be here if you were not meant to be here. Like of all the possibilities and chances, and that sperm met that egg, and that you are here and that you're, doing the thing, there is so much reason and there is so much purpose behind you being here. And so you owe it to yourself to really enjoy the journey. So choose really high caliber people to spend your time with, and know that boundaries are your greatest support system. Know that connecting to yourself through white space and non-demand time is one of the most powerful gifts that you will give yourself. And investing in coaching and mentorship is also just, receiving support and receiving guidance is one of the best things that you will ever do for yourself as well. So you're worthy, you matter, in a nutshell. The end.
Amazing. Yes. It's so nice to have somebody fully in your corner, isn't it? To just be your cheerleader no matter what, rather than, you've got your friends, your family, but like, I feel like it's just an extra level of support for yourself, as a treat for yourself. So, Walnut, if you enjoyed this episode, please tag us on the Instagrams and let us know. Join the Walnut Tree to discuss further, and I'll put all of Anna's stuff into the show notes. But thank you, Walnut, for your time and for being here. And Anna, thank you so much for connecting with me, for all you do in the world. And I love how in your bio you kind of like talk about a no fluff way of getting stuff done. But like, I don't think I shared this with you, but like, sometimes when people message me on Instagram, I get the immediate like sacral, don't, but when you messaged me, I feel like because you have that like no fluff, I am me, I'm happy who I am, it just came across straight away. And I was like, I need to talk to this woman. So thank you for the opportunity to have this chat, for all you do for your clients and for your future clients, and for taking the time to reach out to me as well, because it's
Thank
been
you.
such a pleasure, and I'm so looking forward to a lifelong friendship.
Yay! And part 2 and 3 and 4.
Exactly.
Thank you so much, Lara. Thank you for receiving my message and for voice noting back and letting me come on the podcast.
Have a happy Walnut Wednesday, and I will talk to you next week. Bye.
Bye.